Hello, how's everybody? This is the last lecture before you take the test. And what we did here in class, why don't you go ahead and show the Elmo if you could please. We took this quiz here in class. Now, you folks here who are taking it online, I'm going to go ahead and put this exact quiz in your handout packet. Go ahead and take that, okay? Just pause this and take it. You can see the top half there. You can see the bottom half there. And if anybody's just watching for the fun of it, you can try to take this quiz as well. Okay, so go ahead and take that quiz online, folks. Obviously, I can't grade it for credit. But when we go over it, you can see if you did well on it. Okay? So let's go ahead and go over the answers to it. All right? This is a bond sold at a discount, right? Okay. And the entry for the issuance is right there. Okay. So what kind of account is discount on bonds payable? Anybody remind me?
Contra liability.
It's a contra liability. The adjunct liability is premium. Okay. I like to ask that on tests. Okay. Any questions on those first two? Let's take a look at the amortization table. A lot of people kind of got this wrong, okay? I was trying to think of a nice way to say that. Now remember, this minus this equals this. This minus this equals this. Some people started adding that, okay? Now, the unamortized discount's gonna decrease as it goes through the bond. Now, of course, we're only showing the first two interest payments here, so this shouldn't be expected to go to zero, right? And on a bond sold at a discount, the carrying value will start below par value and it'll gradually rise up and eventually it'll meet it at the end of its 20 years, except I didn't have you do all 20 years of the amortization table. Okay? This number was obtained by taking the contract rate of, what was the contract rate? 6% times par value times 1/2. This column was taken, you take the previous carrying value times the market rate times 1/2. So this is 128,333 times the market rate, 8% times 1/2. Okay? And then this is the difference. That minus that equals that. That minus that equals that. And then the bond carrying value is par value minus whatever is in this column. So 160,000 minus 31667 equals that, right? And then the bottom two. Now, a few of you didn't read the question and you just gave me the journal entry for the bond at maturity date, because a lot of times that was the last question I asked on those handouts. But that's not what I asked here, is it? I didn't ask for the journal entry at the maturity date. I asked how the bond will look. And always make sure that you look at the date I'm asking about. Some people did this date up here, June 30. No, I'm asking for the December 31, 2013. Okay? So I like to give that quiz so that you can assess if you're ready for that portion of the test. Are you guys ready for that portion of the test? No. Okay. It's all right. I'd rather you miss points on a quiz than a test. Okay? All right. Any questions on that, folks? Any questions? Hope you folks at home did well on it. The best way to study for my test is to see if you can produce the results using a blank piece of paper from your homework and your handouts, right? Okay? You online folks, you could go back to those handouts again for bonds, print them off again blank, and see if you can do them. If you can't do the handouts on your own without looking at your notes, you certainly can't do the test. Okay? All right. Let me make an announcement because I'm afraid I'm going to forget it before we wrap up at the end. I will say this at the end. Remind me to say this at the end too. But I have, I'm going to give this to you all here in a little bit. But there is a cash flow statement called the New Warnick Corporation. Okay? You folks at home, you should have this in your handout somewhere. When do I want you to do that? We can come off of that. I want you to do that. I want you to do that whole cash flow statement. Now remember last lecture, number 218, I taught you how to do a full cash flow statement, did I not? Well, here's the sequence of how I want things to go. I want you to take your test, and before you come to the next lecture, which would be 220, before you come to lecture 220, I want you to do New Warnick full cash flow statement, okay? So I usually don't give you homework after the test before the first time we meet, but that's what I'm going to do this time. You with me? Isn't that sweet of me? Okay? It's because I love you, all right? So after you don't have to worry about it before the test. After you take the test, do that New Warnick complete cash flow statement, because that's the first thing we'll do in lecture 220. So, and you folks at home, same thing. Okay? All right. All right. Let's go over the homework. All right? Let's go over the homework here. Let me look at my notes. Let's do exercise 16.1. Exercise 16.1. Okay? All right, let's see what the answer to exercise 16.1 is. I think this was one where they asked you to, they gave you some different cash flows and they wanted you to classify them as far as if it's operating, investing, financing, a non-cash, or if it's not reported. Is that right? So let's take a look at the answers to that. I'm just going to go ahead and put all the answers up. Then we can kind of talk through them. All right, I don't think this is too difficult if you've been using your flashcards. Okay, so take a look there. I don't think there's any real big surprises. F is a non-cash investing and financing, isn't it? The purchasing land by issuing common stock. Oh, I think this H requires a little discussion here. Okay. What is H? H says in the book, sold equipment for cash, yielding a loss. So this was a little bit of a trick question. Because the selling the equipment for cash, that is actually an investing activity, isn't it? But they're also pointing out that the loss that occurs would be handled in the operating section. Okay? I probably wouldn't ask it like that on a test. You with me? But that's why they have those two checks there. Cool? All right, any questions on any of the others on exercise 16.1?
Are there going to be dual answer questions like that?
No, I won't give you a dual answer one like that. Okay? Okay, let's take a look at exercise 16.3, the answer. I believe this one was computing cash flows from operating activities, like we did on that handout. Is that correct? So let's take a look. Okay, 466, 600. Did anybody get that answer? Okay, 466, 600. All right, and you can take a look. Now, they put these things in a little different order. I don't care what order you go in. I usually am pretty consistent with, I first analyze the non-cash expenses. Then I see if there's any gains or losses to be dealt with. That's the second thing I do. They had a gain in this situation. And then the third and final thing I do is analyze the changes in your current assets and current liabilities. Okay, but I don't care what order you have them in. Now, one more time, I'm going to remind you. On a test, I'm going to be looking for one thing, that number. If you have that exact number, you'll get 3 points on that question. If you have any other number, you won't get any, okay? So what did I say was the best way to maximize your points? Do it, and then completely cover up all your work as if you had not done the problem, and do it again, and see if you arrive at the same bottom line answer, okay? If you make an error and you just kind of look through it, you'll look right over the error. I promise you, I promise you, I promise you, because I've been doing these for decades, and I still cover it up and do it twice without looking. And I, a lot of times, catch a little mistake. So I don't want you to lose points. All right? Okay, exercise 16.4, I think, is right below. Now, they show a little different format here. They have the net income here, then they have the adjustments. They do a subtotal and add that to the net income. I usually do it more like the way they did it up here. Either way, I don't care. And on the test, I'm only going to be judging to see if you have this number right here. Okay? And then they did theirs in a little different order as far as what the items that they handled, what sequence they handled those in. Okay? Any questions on exercise 16.4, folks? Well, let's do exercise 16.6. I think it's more the same, is it not? Here is the answer, 452,240. Did anybody get that? Anybody get it? Yep. Yeah? Okay, take a look at that. See if you made a mistake. It's very, very easy to make a mistake on these. You know, one thing that, let me point out, I may have pointed this out before. If I did, I'll point it out again. You need to know that one chart on how to handle current assets and current liabilities, right? Well, the way I memorized it when I was a student was, okay, I knew there was a chart for 4 quadrants. This is current assets. This is current liabilities. This is increase and decrease, right? I just remembered that the current liabilities went with the above sign. That the current liabilities went with the above sign. So the current liabilities increase, add, decrease, subtract. Okay? And then these were just the opposite for current assets. Okay? I think it's sometimes good to jot that little chart down, you know, so you don't make a silly mental error. Just jot it down on your test. Okay? All right, but there's the answer to exercise 16.6. Questions on that, folks? All right. What is next? Is it Quick Study 16.3? Is that the final one? Okay. Quick Study 16.3. Let me go ahead and show that. Okay, there's Quick Study 16.3 at the bottom. And what they want you to do is they want you to compute the cash flows from operating activities. Okay? Now, this is only a selected balance sheet info. So you don't have your total assets and your total liabilities. Okay? It's just selected balance sheet information. But they want you to compute your cash flows from operating activities. So let's take a look at the answer to that. Anybody get an answer?
35,700.
Let me see, I don't remember what it is. No, it's not that. Anybody else get a different answer?
Is it 59,850?
59,850. You are correct. 59,850. So if you made a mistake, just take a look. What'd you do? I'm curious of where your mistake was, Henry.
I think I mixed up the 7,000 decrease AR.
The decrease on AR, you accidentally subtracted it?
I must have messed up the math too.
Yeah, so easy to do. So easy to do. Because it's kind of even hard in your brain. Accounts receivable decrease is added, right? It's so easy on those. So cover up your answers. Do them again on the test, okay? All right. Okay, any questions? Is that it for the homework? Okay, we're going to work on one more here in class while they play that music. And let's go ahead and work on, in class, let's go ahead and work on Quick Study 16.6. Okay? let's just do a little more practice here in class. And let's do quick study 16.6. This is more a real life situation, right? Where you have to figure out the balances and the current assets and current liabilities once you've identified what they are, okay? And go ahead and use the indirect method and prepare the cash flows from operating activities for quick study 16.6 while they play that music. All right, we are back. Okay, let's take a look at Quick Study 16.6. There you go, at the top. Did you get 83,200? Whoops, a little too much of a close-up there. All right, 83,200 is the answer, correct? Now, you can leave it on this while I talk. But one thing I want to point out, in a question that I often get is, now wait a minute, cash is a current asset. Why do we not analyze the change in it like we did for accounts receivable, inventory, and those other current assets, right? Well, you are correct. Cash is a current asset, but we do not analyze the change in cash in this operating section because the entire cash flow statement is an analysis of the change in cash, right? Look at those bottom 3 lines of the cash flow statement, and that's where we analyze the change in cash. So you are correct in that cash is a current asset, but we do not analyze that change in this operating section. Okay? Any questions on this one? Anything? That's it? All right. Okay, I believe I gave you this test review sheet, did I not? Okay, I gave you one of these last period or a period or two ago as far as the review for the accounting test number 2. One thing I neglected to point out is I want you to, do you remember back in lecture 213, we did just a little bit of discussion about foreign exchange transactions, and we did quick study 1514 and 1515. I will have a multiple choice question or two on the test about that. I think I forgot to mention that last period. So make sure that you note that. That will be tested real briefly on the test. However, when I refer to this test, I'm just going to call it the time value of money chapter 14 and 16, since there's only one little point from chapter 15. Also, one more reminder, and I did tell you this last time I believe, but I'll tell you again. You are not required to do a full cash flow statement on test number 2. I will assess that knowledge at a later time, and after test number 2, we will actually still talk about cash flow statements a little bit. But you do not need to do a full cash flow statement on test number 2. So make sure you look over that, and make sure you don't forget to look at that little aspect of chapter 15 that will be tested on this next test, number 2. What is it that I want you to do after you take your test, but before you watch or come to the next lecture? I want you to do the entire New Warnick cash flow statement. And again, if you need to go back and watch lecture 218, where I did an entire cash flow statement and look at the sequencing of steps and those sort of things, feel free to do that. But I want you to do that New Warnick cash flow statement. That'd be a real good thing to do a homework check on, wouldn't it, Creighton? Okay. Okay, any questions for the test? It's over time value of money, chapter 14, and chapter 16, the points on chapter 16 that's on your review sheet. Okay? Has anybody gone out to Connect to look? I do have a quick little chapter 16 Connect assignment. Okay? So go ahead and do that. Okay? Go ahead and do that, folks. It won't take you but, I don't know, 10 minutes at the tops. You folks at home, look at the Connect date for chapter 16 Connect assignment. Okay? We all good? All right, good luck on the test, guys. We'll see you. Remember to do New Warnick before we come back. Bye-bye.